Following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
All right, good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, August 7th, 2013, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to Florida, everyone. We're coming to you live and direct from Miami, Florida, in the new Margarita Studios. We're coming to here and from all sorts of locations all across the state throughout the rest of this week. We've got some great interviews lined up. On Friday, we'll be speaking with Kathy Jordan, the Lou Gehrig's disease survivor, who is the namesake of the medical marijuana initiative here in the state of Florida. We're going to visit with a couple of LEAP speakers, including Kyle Vogt will be one of those that we speak to. We're going to visit with Robert Platshorn, the Black Tuna gang member who was America's longest-serving nonviolent marijuana prisoner. We'll ask him about the Silver Tour and how things are going with getting medical marijuana information in front of seniors here in the state of Florida. We've got some interesting stuff on today's show as well. In the Radical Rant, I'm going to take a look about on the subject of Washington's medical marijuana market versus Washington's upcoming recreational marijuana market. There's a lot of controversy there because medical marijuana is not taxed in Washington state, but recreational marijuana will be heavily taxed. We'll talk about that and what could be done about that when we get to the Radical Rant. At half past on today's show, it's time for your Listen to Your Mother segment. We're going to be visiting with Rebecca Forbes from the Carolina Cannabis Coalition, as well as North Carolina Moms for Marijuana. We'll ask her what progress they are making there in North Carolina for the legalization of marijuana. Also on today's show, it's Irie Wednesday for our daily Toker Tunes. I'm going to bring you one from Bob and Ziggy Marley. We've talked about the children so much. This tune is called Children Playing in the Street. We hope you enjoy that today. Today, also, we're going to go behind the headlines. Jacob Sullen of Reason Magazine has a great post up on Gil Kerlikowski's greatest hits. Basically, the craziest quotations that we got out of our most recent drug czar, who will be leaving the post. He is going to be tapped to be the head of Customs and Border Protection here in the United States government. So on his way out, we'll review some of the craziest things he ever said. But before we get to all of that, we've got to get to your 420 Radio News. And in today's 420 Radio News, the story we told you about yesterday with SOD, that secret Department of Justice program that is using terrorism information to bust small-time drug cases, is going to be investigated by the Department of Justice.
From our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show.
Be right back, live from Miami, right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com. Now it's time for your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, August 7th, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. U.S. Drug Agency Surveillance Unit to be investigated by the Department of Justice. This from theguardian.com. The U.S. Department of Justice has launched an investigation into revelations that the Drug Enforcement Agency uses surveillance tactics, including wiretapping and massive databases of telephone records, to arrest Americans amid growing concerns from lawyers and civil rights groups over its lack of transparency. Reuters on Monday detailed how the Special Operative Division, a unit within the DEA comprising representatives of 24 agencies, including the FBI, CIA, NSA, Internal Revenue Service, and Department of Homeland Security, passes tips from wiretaps, informants, and a database of telephone records to field agents to investigate and arrest criminals. Reuters reports that, although such cases rarely involve national security issues, the DEA agents using the tips are trained to recreate the source of the criminal investigation to conceal its true origin from defense lawyers, prosecutors, and judges. The revelations, which follow the Guardian's recent disclosures of the National Security Agency's wholesale collection of U.S. phone data, have raised concerns among judges, prosecutors, and civil rights lawyers over a lack of transparency. Many said the SOD practice violates a defendant's constitutional right to a fair trial. Michigan Medical Marijuana Panel looks to add PTSD to law, but rejects autism and other conditions, from mlive.com. A state panel appointed to review Michigan's medical marijuana law gave preliminary approval on Tuesday to a citizen petition seeking to add post-traumatic stress disorder to the list of debilitating conditions that can qualify a patient for participation in the program. The Michigan Marijuana Act Review Panel, in a 7-2 vote, recommended adding PTSD to the list. The head of the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs will have final say on whether to add PTSD to the list of debilitating conditions. In a series of separate votes, the panel rejected petitions seeking to add insomnia, asthma, and autism to the list of debilitating conditions under the law. The insomnia vote was preliminary, meaning it will also be subject to a public hearing following another vote. The asthma and autism votes, however, were considered final because the previous iteration of the panel had already considered the petitions and the Michigan had organized public meetings. Uruguay to sell legal marijuana at a low price of $2.50 per gram to compete with black market, from HuffingtonPost.com. Uruguay's lower house passed an unprecedented bill last week that legalizes marijuana and regulates the production, distribution, and sale of weed for adult consumers. El País now reports via Univision that the bill fixes the price of marijuana at around $2.50 per gram. The bill is up for vote in the Senate, where it is expected to be passed and finally signed into law by President Jose Mujica, a longtime supporter of drug reform. What sets Uruguay's bill apart is that it provides for government control over the entire marijuana industry, from cultivation to consumption. Individual citizens, cooperatives, and private companies can grow a specified amount of weed each month, though it may only be sold to customers by state-run pharmacies. Purchasers will have to register with the state and be limited to 40 grams per month. While Insight Crime reports that the current cost of pot varies by region and can reach up to about $5 per gram, Julio Calzada, Uruguay's drug czar, told El País that the proposed fixed price of $2.50 per gram is on par with the going underground rates, the hope being that the competitive pricing will attract users to the legal market without providing a profit incentive for resale in the black market. Marijuana legalization, while U.S. Latinos are not Latin Americans, from FoxNews.com, or from, WLRN.org. According to a recent Pew Research Center survey, 51% of U.S. Latinos now support legalizing marijuana, about the same majority, 52%, of Americans as a whole. In Colorado last November, Latino voters may have been the deciding factor in the passage of that state's marijuana legalization ballot measure. 70% of them backed it, according to exit polls. In a recent poll that showed 7 in 10 Floridians favor legalizing at least medical marijuana, Latinos were cited as one of the groups most likely to give such a measure the thumbs up. Latinos are disappointing social conservatives on the expectation that Latino families would rise up against legalizing marijuana. If last year's Colorado referendum is any gauge, Latinos seem to increasingly agree with the idea behind Uruguay's unprecedented federal measure. This has been your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, August 7th, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. When we come back, we go behind the headlines to take a look at the departure of U.S. drug czar Gil Kurlikowski for Customs and Border Protection and some of his greatest hits, a.k.a. the dumbest things he said about marijuana in his term as drug czar. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. We'll be right back.
I'm Sub Cool from Team Green Avenger. At TGAgenetics.com, we are working on the leading edge of medical strains. Our strains are rigorously tested for THC, CBD, THCV, and other critical cannabinoids. Know your grow. Check out our genetic diversity at TGAgenetics.com, the home of Jelly Bean, Jack the Ripper, Vortex, and other award-winning cannabis strains.
Hey there, Danny Danko here, Senior Cultivation Editor of High Times Magazine. In my travels, I get to see a lot of different grow spaces, and I'm always amazed by some of the innovations and repurposing ideas that growers have to reuse products and to grow better plants. Now, we're here in the gardens of DJ Stone in Rhode Island, and we actually have DJ on hand to explain a little bit about this. So, am I right? Are these laundry buckets and laundry baskets and old crates and stuff there?
Yeah, old milk crates, and they have great big holes, and as you can see, we lined them here with some landscape meshes that allows oxygen and air right into the roots, so while the fans are circulating, the roots get great stimulation.
Wow. Oh, that's excellent. And so, do you notice that the plants grow better when they get more oxygen to the roots?
Of course, our whole garden here is strictly organic here. We make our own mixture of soils, and the nutrients are right in the soils to begin with, so it's all natural, all organic, and the roots here just absolutely, sometimes they poke right through the mesh. Well, you know, smart pots and a lot of those other spots cost a lot of money, and these things here, they're reusable every time. You just take it out, rinse it off, throw some new landscape lining in there, and you're all set.
Well, that's real cool how you've been able to, use eco-friendly techniques like reusing other materials for a new purpose. So, thanks for the tip.
Sleeping on the train, sleeping on Mesero Lab out in the rain, without even a single slice of pizza to my...
Driving okay?
The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while. Share.
I think we're parked.
Take a little trip, take a little trip, take a little trip and see.
Welcome back, everybody. 14 after the hour, time for us to go behind the headlines. And our friend Jacob Sullum out at Reason.com has a great post up today entitled Outgoing Drug Czar Gil Kurlikowski's Greatest Hits. As you know, Gil Kurlikowski, our current drug czar since 2009, was appointed by President Obama. He was a former police chief in the city of Seattle, a city that at the time had already passed a lowest law enforcement priority for marijuana, and also had the Seattle Hemp Fest, where pretty much cops turn a blind eye to public use of marijuana, Gil Kurlikowski being one of them. So when he became drug czar, we had some hope that he might bring some sensibility to the post, that he might recognize that as a big city police chief, that marijuana policing is one of the least priority crimes they need to deal with. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Pretty much, Gil Kurlikowski, very much like the drug czar before him, John Walters, continued to press the U.S. war on drugs. Here are some of Gil Kurlikowski's most famous sayings during this war on drugs. In June of 2009, Kurlikowski said, quote, "Marijuana is dangerous and has no medical benefit." Now, this, of course, coming from a guy who was police chief in a state that had passed medical marijuana all the way back in 1998. In July of 2009, he said, quote, "Legalization is not in the president's vocabulary, and it's not in mine." This, of course, when the first few open for question polls were coming out, asking the people, change.gov, asking the people what they would like to see the president tackle. And when time and time and time again, it came back that the people wanted us to do something about marijuana legalization, that's when Kurlikowski said legalization was not in the president's vocabulary. That led a few of us in drug law reform to buy some dictionaries and highlight the word legalization and mail those to the drug czar. Can't tell you if we got them or not. In August of 2009, he said, quote, "We had been hiking in 107-degree weather in the Sierra Nevadas, and when we came down, the question was in reference to smoked marijuana. And as you know, smoked marijuana has not been shown by the FDA to show medicinal value. This is a medical question, and that's where we're going to leave it." They always have to come back to smoked marijuana because we've seen lots and lots of benefits from edible marijuana, vaporized marijuana, tincture marijuana. The smoking is what Gil always would bring it back to because, again, the FDA, the major health organizations are against smoking, which they should be. Smoking in and of itself is not a good thing. A year later, in August 2010, Gil Kurlikowski said, quote, "It is our experience that an overwhelming majority of police professionals does not support legalizing marijuana. Our opposition to legalizing marijuana is grounded not in ideology, but in facts and experience," end quote. Despite the facts and experience of Gil Kurlikowski's own tenure as the police chief of Seattle. In September 2010, he said, quote, "I think all of the attention and the focus of calling marijuana medicine has sent the absolute wrong message to our young people," end quote. Yes, what a terrible message to send to the young people, that the use of a natural, non-toxic herb could be medically beneficial. What a terrible message to be showing young people with cancer, AIDS, glaucoma, ALS, multiple sclerosis, and showing on video how they use marijuana and it actually works for them. Isn't that amazing? In October of 2010, while jumping in from Washington and telling Californians how to vote on Prop 19, Kurlikowski declares, quote, "People don't want to see someone jump in from Washington and tell them how to vote," end quote. And it's very interesting that Kurlikowski was very vocal in opposing Prop 19 in 2010, as was the Department of Justice. But come 2012, when marijuana legalization was on the ballot in Washington and Colorado, we heard very little. We heard nothing from the drug czar. We heard nothing from the Department of Justice in trying to stop them, despite the heads of the DEA, previous heads of the DEA, writing a letter, a unanimous letter, to call on them to oppose that. In December of 2010, Kurlikowski identifies Just Say No, under Nancy Reagan, as one of the drug war's major successes. Major success. Just Say No worked so well. All right, and let me get to some of these most heinous ones. September 2011, people keep calling marijuana medicine, and that's the wrong message for young people to hear. I guess we should go back to the Reagan-era message when Ronald Reagan was saying we have absolute proof that smoking even one marijuana cigarette is equal in brain damage to being on Bikini Atoll during an A-bomb blast. Is that the right message we need to be sending to the children? Let's see. We also have from October 2011, our concern about marijuana is based on what the science tells us about the drug's effects. Really? You mean like the science that's been telling us that it's effective as a neuroprotectant, as it seems to stave off the effects of Alzheimer's, as it seems to protect people against the progression of Lou Gehrig's disease, against multiple sclerosis? The final quote we have from Gil, April 2013, "This is what drug policy reform looks like. It looks like a doctor. It looks like a nurse." Well, start listening to so many doctors in so many of these states that can tell you marijuana is medicine, Gil. All right, that time means that it is 4:20 somewhere in the world. 4:20 in the mountain time zone. I'll tell you, it's not 4:20 here in the state of Florida. It's like a felony here, folks. Smoke one for me, will you?
Ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
What makes something funny? How does humor impact health and psychological well-being? How can you incorporate humor into everyday life? A concise, reader-friendly introduction to an important but often underappreciated topic in modern psychology, Humor 101 explains the role of comedy, jokes, and wit in the sciences and discusses why they are so important to understand. Psychology professor Dr. Mitch Earlywine draws from his personal experiences in stand-up comedy to focus on how humor can regulate emotion, reduce anxiety, and diffuse tense situations, expose pretensions, build personal relationships, and much more. He irreverently debunks the pseudoscience on the topic of humor and leaves readers not only funnier, but better informed. It's part of the Psych 101 series from Springer Publishing, Humor 101 by Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D.
Big Daddy thinks.
Funky roller ring. Oh yeah, this is Big Daddy, and I'll be your freakazoid every Thursday night, right here at the Funky Roller Ring. Funky Roller Ring. 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Funky Roller Ring.
I like it like that.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Irie Wednesday, featuring reggae, ska, and other world music genres. You can get downloads and more information about all our Daily Toker Tunes by visiting music.radicalruss.com. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tunes.
Welcome back, everybody, and time for me to take the reins here on the Irie Wednesday Daily Toker Tunes. As you know, Brian the Red has had to take hiatus from the show in order to deal with Babylon. So it's up to me to pick out the reggae tunes, and I got to be honest with you, reggae is not my strongest genre. So I'm just going to go to the old classics here and pull out a song from Bob and Ziggy Marley. It's entitled Children Playing in the Street. But I would also like to invite you listeners out there that if you have a strong knowledge of the reggae genre, whether it be old or new, and you'd be interested in helping us supply a song every week for our Irie Wednesdays, you could join Bago Schwago and Herb Thrasher and Bacon Dan as one of our music editors. One of the bonuses is being... And we've got dogs barking. One of the benefits of being one of our music editors is that you get access to our complete music library. You can download any of the tunes. And, of course, you get all sorts of benefits. At 420 Radio will make you a gold VIP in exchange for your work. All right, the dogs are going crazy here at the Margarita Studio, so let's just turn things over to Bob and Ziggy Marley. This is Children Playing in the Street.
Baby got nothing to eat.
Cause, oh Lord,
In the ghetto, bitter was sweet. Sitting in the darkness, run your tears. Sitting in the darkness, searching for the light. Struggling in the ghetto, trying to do the right. Mothers screaming, watch the car. But the hit and run man had gone too far. Sitting in the darkness, searching for the light. Struggling in the ghetto, trying to do the right. Sitting in the darkness, searching for the light. Struggling in the ghetto, trying to do the right. Playing in the ghetto, searching for the light. Sitting in the darkness, searching for the light. Struggling in the ghetto, trying to do the right.
Wait, you're right, lads. It's like in my head, you know. We had a chat with everyone. Hey, Jill, how are you? Everything's absolutely amazing. Haven't seen you for ages. Haven't seen you last week. I mean, you're not invited. I know you. What's your name? Oh, don't tell me. Don't tell me. I'll make you. What are you laughing at? A little bit stressed, a little bit panicky. You're a little bit panicky, a little bit stressed. You're all right. What's your name? You're all right. You're feeling okay.
The more you mess with cannabis, the more it can mess with your mind. To find out more, talk to Frank.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact Normal at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show here. Trying to get set up with our call with Rebecca Forbes out of North Carolina. Rebecca, are you on the line? Okay, we're having some problem with the connection there. I'm going to have to try a couple of tricks here to get this connection going. So give me a moment. And in the meantime, I'll put some music up for us to enjoy until we can get the segment running. Hold on, folks.
Panama red, Panama red. They steal your woman, then they'll rob your head. Panama red, Panama red. On his white horse, Mescalito, he comes breezing through town. Bet your woman is up in bed with old Panama red. The judges don't know when Red's in town. He keeps well hidden underground. Everybody's acting lazy, falling out or hanging around. My woman said, hey Pedro, you're acting crazy like a clown. Nobody feels like working. Panama Red is back in town. Panama Red, Panama Red. He'll steal your woman, then he'll rob your head. Panama Red, Panama Red. On his white horse, Mescalito, he comes breezing through town. Bet your woman is up in bed with old Panama Red. Everybody's looking out for him 'cause they know red satisfies. Little girls like to listen to him sing, tell sweet lies. But when things get too confusing, honey, we're better off in bed. I'll be searching all the joints in town.
His kids in the home, and he was running the most legit research cannabis operation that he could legally. He had bought his tax stamp. He had filed with the Secretary of State as a research center, and he was studying the effects of cannabis on different people using it. So this is becoming pretty blown up, and it's hitting the media, and we are holding rallies in support of him.
Oh, right.
So this may be the case that finally establishes a medical defense for the people of North Carolina.
And
we're hoping.
Let me get back to our audience for just a second. My apologies with our remote setup here. The first
I heard
of our interview was muted there, so I think we've got it fixed now. But we're talking with Rebecca Forbes from the Carolina Cannabis Coalition, and the fight there to try to get some sort of medical act passed in the state of North Carolina. Now, I've been watching North Carolina politics not just for the medical bill, but there's been all sorts of bills that have gone through the legislature lately that have been pretty reactionary. How do you feel about your chances moving forward with the state of your legislature right now?
Well, the beauty of this is that I met the man behind the Moral Mondays, Reverend Barber, not too long ago, and I actually looked at him and said, do you think that medical cannabis is something that you'd be willing to fight for? And he actually told me to make an appointment with him, but Moral Monday has blown up so big, and he's traveling so much that I haven't been able to run him down. But we had 10,000 people show up in Asheville this past weekend for a Moral Monday event. And yes, North Carolina voters are disgusted. They have taken voting laws back to unconstitutional status here. They have cut education funding. They have cut unemployment. They are enforcing the drug testing for welfare thing. It's just horrible what's going on here, and people are finally waking up, and I'm loving seeing the thousands of people protesting outside our Capitol. I think it's marvelous.
Yeah, it's about time that people, especially in the southern states, are starting to fight for these measures and to get some sort of sensibility there. It's a lot of people in reform kind of write the South off. They have a feeling like it really can't happen. It's going to happen in other states before the South will ever take this up. But now
I've heard the statement that North Carolina will be the last state to ever do it. But I don't believe that. I really think that if they would sit down and get educated, that would change.
Yeah, and we're meeting so many strong women down there that are starting to fight. Yourself, we've got Sharon Ravert in Georgia.
Yes,
we've got Loretta Nall in Alabama. So I know
Kathy Jordan in Florida.
Yes, I know that this fight can be won, and I know there's going to be strong women like you that help win this fight. If there's people out there listening that want to get involved with you guys and help you out, can you give them some contact information?
Well, a good way to get involved is if you're a woman and you want to get involved in this is Moms for Marijuana International. You can find them on Facebook or do a Google search and find them. You can also support the local chapters. The Georgia Care Project is a good one if you're in Georgia. Here, the Carolina Cannabis Coalition or NCCPN on the state levels. If you want to support changing federal law, you can come to D.C. with us in April. So there's a lot people can get involved. And if you are in the closet and your job depends on you not saying anything about cannabis, donate. Help those of us that are on the front lines, like Sharon, myself, Kathy Jordan, and some of the other powerful women down here. Help us. And help us have the power to travel and speak and do what needs to be done.
You know, Rebecca,
I know Sharon's filming Patience today, and that's why she couldn't be on your show, which is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, she's out working.
That's right. And that's what it takes. And Rebecca, I often say that there's, 3 ways that people become activists. Number 1, they get busted, and so they want revenge. Number 2, they get sick, so they want medicine. Or number 3, they just intellectually can't handle the land of the free treating our people this way. In which camp do you come from?
All 3.
All 3. Okay, tell us a little bit about what.
Well, back in the 90s, I'm in a movie for it. My family was busted for growing marijuana, raided several times over several years, and they finally got us with enough to put myself and my ex both in prison, take our child, took our home, vehicles, money, all of it, wiped us out. And then I actually quit smoking cannabis for 10 years because of that. But then I got sick. So I learned about medical marijuana from Jean Marlowe, another huge North Carolina activist that's kind of out of the scene because she's not feeling well. But I learned from her about the medical and started smoking cannabis after 10 years and actually stopped the use of Oxycontin, smoking cannabis. So that was my first experience with medical cannabis, realizing, hey, there is some validity to this. Because I was always just a rec user. I was healthy, I was young, and I was a rec user. So that was my experience with medical, but I also am on the side of, if you're an adult, you have every right to roll up a joint. If we can drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, and take some of the legal pharmaceuticals that we're given, there's absolutely no reason why an adult shouldn't be able to roll a joint and smoke it.
Absolutely.
So I'm really in all 3 camps. And I'm in the hemp camp. I'm in the industrial hemp camp, too.
And, coming from North Carolina, that's a pretty important statement, because I understand that, was it in Raleigh or Asheville where they built the hemp houses?
Yes, the first hemp house built in the United States was built by Greg Faval of Hemp Technologies, who has left our state with his business because they were so rude to him. It was built by the ex-mayor of Asheville for his child, because a hemp house is the safest environment for a child that has severe allergies. Because of the non-toxicity of that environment. And so we do, on historical record, we're the owners of the first hemp house in America. North Carolina is.
Yeah, and so that's been something that's been on people's minds. And another thing about North Carolina is it is one of the 6 states that has decriminalization that doesn't have medical marijuana. How has that decriminalization affected people?
I wouldn't consider this decrimmed at all. I went the other day and looked at the normal site for penalties, and they've actually increased penalties. I was a little shocked at some of the penalties, especially for extracts and things like that in this state. They call themselves decrim because, and the reason being is that a few years ago they rescheduled cannabis here to a Schedule 6 drug under state law, meaning it has a very low potential for abuse. But they didn't really change the penalties much. We tried 2 decrim bills to get them to lower, like, simple possession penalties to a $100 fine, and both of them were shot down. We tried the last 2 years to get them to pass further decriminalization, but they won't do it.
Mm. Yeah, and part of what's going to make the change here in the South is getting activists educated and understanding what the fight's all about and how best to move forward. One of the ways that we do that is through seminars and presentations and festivals. And I was just down in Georgia for the Southern Cannabis Reform Conference in February. I'm wondering...
Yeah, where I met you.
Yeah, are there any future conferences for the region coming up that you want to tell people about?
Well, I just spoke at the first Asheville Normal event. It was wonderful. It was at a brewery that had a really nice outdoor stadium in Black Mountain at the Pisgah Brewery. They plan on making that a yearly event, so that's something to put on your calendar for next year. There's also Cannabis Camp coming up here that I'm speaking at October 7th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, I believe. If you want to go to the CCC page, CarolinaCannabisCoalition.webs.com, I'll be putting some information up about that here in North Carolina. But it'll be the first Camp Cannabis for the medical people. So this is basically more geared towards what the patients need and what the patients want in this state. There's a lot of people educated in this state now. We even have politicians using cannabis that are in the closet.
Mm.
Because there's definite validity to the medical. We just can't get the politicians to pay us any attention.
Well,
the ones that are against us.
We'll get that changed, and I know that you're working hard to make that happen. Rebecca Forbes with the Carolina Cannabis Coalition and all the groups working there in the South. We appreciate you more than you can know, and thanks for joining us here on the Russ Belville Show.
Well, I'm real excited about speaking at Seattle Hemp Fest and filling everybody in about the good old sunny South.
Yeah.
So I'll see you there, Russ.
I will see you at Hemp Fest. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, folks, time for us to take a little break. When we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant on the situation in Washington State, medical versus recreational marijuana. Can it last? Be right back.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
Legalize me. Don't criticize.
I'm just overjoyed. I've been cannabis activist for 40 years.
We're turning the corner on a failed policy that's been disastrous for our communities, and things are going to get better.
80 years ago, we repealed alcohol prohibition in this state. We did it prior to the federal government, and we're doing the same thing when it comes to marijuana. We are a step ahead, and we will continue to lead the way. It means I'm going to smoke a lot of weed tonight. Woo!
Some call it marijuana.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Some of them call it ganja. Never mind.
legal.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant. All right, today I wanted to talk a little bit about a story that I found out in Fox News that deserves a little talking, and that was entitled Buzzkill, Medical Marijuana Popularity Threatens Legal Pot Push. And this is talking about the controversy that's growing in Washington State right now between the people who are supporters of medical cannabis versus the Liquor Control Board, which has been tasked with regulating recreational marijuana. And remember that a lot of these people on the medical marijuana side that are quoted in this piece are people that openly opposed recreational marijuana. They openly opposed I-502 for the fears that it would hurt patients. And their two primary talking points were the 5 nanogram per milliliter DUI that we are all talked to death about. But the other point that they brought up is that having a recreational marijuana market, particularly with taxation involved in it, would lead to the inevitable taxation of medical marijuana. And this is what they're complaining about in this latest piece. The concern is that when recreational pot goes on sale in 2014, it is going to cause the legislature to have to tax medical marijuana in order to prevent there being an incentive to get on the medical list merely for the low prices. The original proposal, I-502, when it was being backed by the campaign in 2012, touted an expected $500 million tax windfall every year from the sales of recreational pot. But their state pot czar, Mark Kleiman, the professor from UCLA, says that the competition for medical marijuana could cut that in half, the amount of tax revenue that the state would receive. Now, the Washington law is also unique among all medical marijuana states in that it does not have a registry. Now, a lot of states have voluntary registries. Washington has no registry. All you need is your letter, your recommendation on tamper-proof paper written from your doctor in Washington State or your naturopath, and you are a medical marijuana patient. And no taxation of medical marijuana as well. But I-502, which passed in November, legalizing an ounce for all adults, sets the tax rates at 25% at 3 stages, from the grower, from the seller, and to the buyer. And then on top of that, have to pay the sales tax in Washington State, which, according to my records here, Washington State sales tax is 6.5%. So you're going to have people buying marijuana, 25% tax wholesale, 25% tax retail, 25% tax to the seller or to the buyer, and 6.5% sales tax on top of that. We are talking about marijuana that may end up being priced $12.50 to $15 a gram. We're talking about ounces that are going to be priced around $400, $450. Meanwhile, at the medical marijuana farmers markets and outlets that we find all throughout the state of Washington, marijuana is typically selling for about $200 an ounce, or even less than that, $10 a gram, or even less than that, depending on the strain. This, of course, is going to make medical marijuana a whole lot cheaper than recreational marijuana and create a perverse incentive for people to want to get a medical marijuana recommendation solely as a way to save money. And then in addition, there's already the incentive to get the medical marijuana card because medical marijuana people can grow up to 15 plants. Recreational users are not going to be allowed to grow any marijuana whatsoever. So the lure of cheap price and the lure of being able to grow is going to be too much to overcome. These people are going to want their cheap marijuana and their right to grow. And that's going to cause the medical marijuana side of Washington State's pot industry to get overwhelmed by recreational consumers. That will then be used by the people who are against medical marijuana, the Kevin Sabett's and Patrick Kennedy's of the world, to say, see, you can't have legalized marijuana. You can't have medical marijuana. It's all a bunch of fakes. It's all a bunch of frauds, people trying to just get a cheaper price or trying to grow. However, I do have to call out the medical marijuana side a little bit here in the fact that it seems like they want to have it both ways. Here's a quote from Steve Sarich, who's from the Cannabis Action Coalition. He was also the primary person against Washington's I-502, spending lots and lots of money that he made from selling weed to make sure people who buy weed that aren't sick would still go to jail. He said, quote, either it is medicine or it's not medicine, but it can't be medicine and be taxed. Sarich points out that no prescription drugs are currently taxed. Now, this is absolutely true. There is no tax on prescription drugs in any of the United States, with the exception, I believe, of the state of Illinois. And let me confirm that. Yes, state of Illinois does have a 1% tax on prescription drugs. Aside from that, no other state taxes prescription drugs. And there are 5 states, of course, that have no sales tax whatsoever. Those would be Alaska, Delaware, New Hampshire, Montana, and Oregon. So those states don't, and Oklahoma, excuse me. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Oregon. That's right. So those states don't tax prescription medications either. But when we look at non-prescription drugs, there are only 9 states in the United States. That would be Florida, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, Vermont, and Virginia. There are only those 9 states that don't tax non-prescription drugs. And technically speaking, medical marijuana in any state is a non-prescription drug. Steve Sarich and these medical marijuana people from Cannabis Action Coalition seem to want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to get the benefit of not taxing this prescription drug, not taxing marijuana because it's a medicine. But they don't want to have to jump through all the hoops and go through all the regulations and bureaucracy that it would take to make marijuana a prescription drug. Untaxed prescription marijuana is coming. It's called Sativex. It's going to be sprays and inhalers and cannaceuticals made by Big Pharma that will be gladly untaxed. But the problem with trying to maintain medical marijuana, the whole plant, as a separate untaxed item is, again, the fungibility of marijuana. You cannot tell medical marijuana from regular marijuana. And this is going to be impossible for any sort of regulatory agency to be able to control. It's going to lead to people trying to get their medical recommendations in order to just skirt the tax, in order to be able to grow their plants. And we're going to see a similar situation in any state that attempts to try to maintain a medical market and a recreational market alongside each other. So long as the medical people want to have some sort of special benefit for being sick for their use of marijuana, the people who aren't sick are going to try to take advantage of that benefit. Rather than fighting for medical marijuana to not be taxed, how about we fight for all marijuana to be reasonably taxed? I agree with the people that say the 25% tax rate at 3 different levels of the Washington scheme is very, very, is really going overboard on the taxation. We know that if we overtax marijuana, if we artificially keep the price of marijuana too high, people will try to find a way to beat that price, whether that means going back to the black market like they're doing currently, whether that means trying to get into the Washington medical program, as some people are doing currently. It doesn't matter. People who like marijuana are going to seek the lowest price for it. It is going to be impossible to maintain 2 different price points based on whether or not someone's sick or whether someone is healthy. So let's fight further for lowering the taxes on marijuana as a whole. And let's also start to recognize that the fight that we originally had for medical marijuana to get the sick off of the battlefield in the war on drugs still maintains the idea that there should be a battlefield in the war on drugs. It still maintains the idea that some healthy people are going to be collateral damage in that war. I think at this point in American history, especially on the West Coast, especially in the states that have had medical marijuana since 2000 or before. It is time to go on the all-out offensive, fighting for legalization and showing how legalization of marijuana for everyone is the only thing that prevents this dual industry, this dual setup of trying to maintain two different marijuana markets. Washington State's done what it had to do. It passed legalization and didn't do anything to touch the medical marijuana. And this is one of the problems that we find, is that in the states that have medical marijuana, there are now interest groups interested in keeping it just the way it is. Whether it be growers who like the prohibition profits without the chance of being busted by the state, whether it's the medical marijuana doctors and clinics that have an entire business built up on getting people permission slips for the right to use cannabis, those entrenched industries are going to fight all attempts at marijuana legalization, and trying to cotton to them, trying to accommodate the needs of the 10% who are medical users, ends up giving us laws that are going to, in the long run, hurt the medical cause. This situation in Washington State is just one of those situations. If originally 502 could have been written, if laws could have been passed that said, we're getting rid of medical marijuana, here's how all marijuana is going to work, we wouldn't have this situation of trying to artificially maintain two separate streams of marijuana commerce. A similar battle was fought in Oregon over the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. When it was originally written, it was going to supersede and replace all medical laws, until the medical community screamed bloody murder about that, despite the fact that what the bill was going to do was just open up the medical program for everyone. It was just going to create the same limits, the same possession amounts, the same plant amounts for everyone, healthy or sick. But the medical community was so afraid of losing their special privilege that they scuttled any chance of getting that bill passed. It's time for the medical people to start recognizing that only the path of full legalization for all people is ever going to truly protect the medical users. We just saw it in Michigan, where people with asthma, autism, and insomnia were denied from using medical marijuana by their panel. We see it in state after state that is continuing to have much more strict conditions to be able to get medical marijuana, like the state of Illinois, where chronic pain or severe nausea will not qualify you for medical marijuana. It's time to break through this idea of separating us by how sick we are and standing up for all cannabis consumers, sick and healthy, and coming up with laws that protect us all, laws that are fair to all of us. None of us should have to pay more for marijuana because we're sick, or pay more because we're healthy. None of us should have to be restricted from growing marijuana just because we're healthy. It's one plant. Let's have one rule for all of its users. All right, that's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us here live from Miami, Florida. We've got more Florida interviews and shows coming to you all week long here. Thanks for joining us. I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you